There's no activities going to make a woman look like a man unless you do something to your endocrine system, meaning if you inject steroids into your body.
What if the thing you wanted most in life slowly turned you into someone you no longer recognized?
In her final weeks, she was struggling.
I cannot stop the cough.
Not because of a bad decision, not because of a moment of weakness, but because of a choice you made every single morning, in the dark, before the world woke up. These women did not stumble into steroids by accident.
Everybody around me was like, take the pills or take the whatnot.
They chased them, and in chasing them, they found something they never expected. A body that kept changing long after they told it to stop. These are 13 women who let steroids take over their bodies. Nicole Bass. She built a monster she couldn't control. Picture this, a woman so physically imposing that when she walked into a room, grown men moved out of the way. Not because she asked them to, just because something in their brain said, step aside. That was Nicole Bass, and she loved every second of it. Nicole discovered bodybuilding in 1985 and immediately understood something most athletes never figure out. She was not built for moderation. She was built for excess. More weight, more reps, more everything. She trained until her hands bled, and then she trained some more. By the time she entered professional wrestling in the late 1990s, she had become something that did not exist in nature. A woman with the frame of a defensive lineman and the presence of a thunderstorm. But the muscle came with a cosigner, anabolic steroids, and that cosigner eventually came to collect. The jaw she once saw as strong started looking foreign in the mirror. Her voice, once recognizable, dropped into a register she did not choose. These were not gym side effects. These were the drugs rewriting her biology. Then her body started sending different messages. Pancreatitis in 2006, a stroke that left her shaken, a heart attack that should have been impossible for someone who had spent decades obsessing over physical health. But the body does not forget what you put into it, it just waits. Nicole passed away in 2017. She was 52. The woman who once looked indestructible had been quietly coming apart for years. She gave the sport everything she had, and the sport, along with the substances that fueled it, gave her back something she never asked for. Chyna, the woman they loved to watch and forgot to protect. There has never been anyone in sports entertainment quite like Joan Laurer. The world knew her as Chyna, and Chyna was not a character. She was a statement. Standing 5'8" and carrying over 200 pounds of sculpted muscle, she walked into the most male-dominated arena on the planet and did not ask for permission. She took up space, loudly, unapologetically, historically. In 1997, she became the first woman to compete in the Royal Rumble. She held the Intercontinental Championship. She powerbombed men twice her age in front of 70,000 screaming fans. Kids looked at her and saw something they had never seen before. A woman who was stronger than the strongest man in the room and completely comfortable with that fact. Behind the curtain, though, the story was darker. The deep voice and rapidly shifting physique sparked constant speculation. Chyna denied steroid use to the end, but the physical signs told a story the denials could not erase. And while her body was being shaped by substances she may or may not have acknowledged, her personal life was being destroyed by something far more human: betrayal. When she was fired after her very public breakup with one of the company's top stars, Chyna did not just lose a job, she lost the identity that had kept her standing. Without the ring, the muscles that had made her iconic became a painful reminder of a life she could not get back. She fell into addiction. She disappeared from the world she had once commanded. In April 2016, she was found in her apartment. She was 46 years old. The ninth wonder of the world was gone, and the sport that had used her power for years had long since moved on without her. Chizevsky, the champion who was told to get smaller. Imagine working for a decade to become the best in the world at something. Imagine reaching the absolute top, and then imagine being told that the top is no longer where they want you. That is exactly what happened to Chizevsky. She started competing in 1989, and by the mid-90s, she had become something the sport of women's bodybuilding had never produced before. A 4-time Ms. Olympia champion, a woman so dominant that her rivals stopped thinking about first place and started competing for second. Her legs earned her a nickname, Thundra, because when she hit the stage, you felt it. Kim never publicly confirmed steroid use, but at 157 pounds of shredded, vascular, impossibly defined muscle, the science of natural human physiology had clearly been interrupted somewhere along the way. The jawline, the definition, the conditioning that elite male athletes would have envied. These things do not arrive from chicken breast and treadmills alone. Then, in 2000, the sport changed the rules beneath her feet. Judges were instructed to reward femininity alongside muscle. Women were told to look softer, more traditionally beautiful, more palatable. Kim had spent years building a body that could win by the old rules. Now the old rules were gone. She had a choice: shrink herself to fit a new mold, or walk away from the sport she had mastered. She effectively chose the latter. The woman who had defined an era of women's bodybuilding quietly stepped back while the sport reshaped itself into something that no longer had room for her. Kim Chizevsky's story is not about what steroids did to her body. It is about what the industry does to the women who use them to reach the top, and then discards them when the aesthetic stops being convenient. Colette Guimond, 9 surgeries and she still came back bigger. Most people, after 1 surgery, need a few months to recover. After 2, they start reconsidering their life choices. After 9, they are usually done with whatever activity caused the damage. Colette Guimond had 9 surgeries after a devastating accident in 1997 and responded by getting bigger. Standing 5'1", she had built herself into a 150-pound wall of muscle that defied both her height and every expectation the sport placed on women her size. She was compact, dense, and almost geometrically perfect before the accident shattered her symmetry and her body along with it. The Michelangelo sculpture got knocked off its pedestal and cracked down the middle. Rational people retire after that. Colette went back to the gym. By 2005, she had won Canada's heavyweight title. By 2018, she was pushing 175 pounds. Her legs outgrew every pair of jeans she owned. Leggings became her permanent wardrobe because nothing else fit. People stared, not just because she was muscular, but because the combination of her height and her mass created a silhouette that seemed physically impossible. The steroid question surrounded her the entire time. She never confirmed it directly, but the speed of her recovery and the scale of her rebuilding pointed toward chemical assistance that went beyond protein shakes and positive thinking. Colette's story is about a very specific kind of obsession, the kind that does not break when the body breaks, the kind that rebuilds alongside the bones and comes back even harder. Whether that obsession is admirable or alarming probably depends on the day you ask the question. Diana Kado. She won the trophy and then chased the filter. In 2004, Diana Kado stood on the Ms. Olympia stage at 127 pounds and won the lightweight title. She was dense, polished, and balanced in a way that made other competitors look unfinished. Her conditioning was elite. Her stage presence was effortless. She had done what most female bodybuilders only talk about. Then Instagram was invented, and everything changed. Diana watched the sport she had mastered slowly lose ground to a new kind of female body. Not muscular, curvy, filtered, surgically enhanced in very different directions than the gym had ever produced. The athletes who moved culture were no longer women with calloused hands and competition diaries. They were women with editing apps and ring lights. And so Diana started changing. The waist got smaller, the curves got more dramatic, the muscle softened, and the aesthetic shifted towards something that performed better in a thumbnail than on a posing stage. Fans who remembered her from her competition years did side-by-side comparisons with the kind of forensic energy usually reserved for true crime documentaries. Had she traded one transformation for another? Had the same willingness to alter her body for competitive advantage simply found a new arena? The speculation about what she had used in her competing years never went away. It just got joined by new questions about what she was doing now. Diana Kado became a symbol of something the fitness world rarely talks about honestly. The pressure does not stop when the competition ends. It just changes shape. Renee Toney. She told the truth nobody else would. In a sport full of people who claim their bodies are the product of dedication and genetics, Renee Toney was refreshingly, almost shockingly honest. She used steroids. She said so, out loud, without apology, while everyone around her was managing their public image and carefully avoiding direct answers. Renee looked at the question and answered it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. By the early 2000s, she had become one of the most muscular women on the planet. 5 feet 8, 214 pounds, arms that measured 20 inches on the left and 20.25 on the right, a record that still has not been broken. Her physique was not just impressive, it was almost confrontational. Every vein, every striation, every impossible dimension of her body seemed to be daring you to look away. Her voice had deepened considerably. Her jawline had the sharpness that comes not from bone structure alone. The androgenic effects of long-term steroid use had visibly rewritten features that had nothing to do with lifting weights. And Renee did not hide any of it. She was not a cautionary tale. She was a choice. A fully informed, fully owned, completely unapologetic choice. People praised her. People criticized her. Athletes whispered about her in gym locker rooms. And through all of it, Renee remained exactly what she had always been. Honest about who she was and completely indifferent to whether you approved. Her record stands. Her honesty still cuts through the noise of a sport that rarely tells the truth about itself. Joanna Thomas, the youngest, the most gifted, the most fragile. Joanna Thomas became a professional female bodybuilder at 21 years old. That made her the youngest woman in British history to earn that title. Think about what that means. At an age when most people are still figuring out their major or their first apartment, Joanna had already reached the professional level of one of the most physically demanding sports on Earth. She was compact, precise, and built with a density that seemed to belong to someone twice her age and 3 times her experience. Her training was brutal, recovery sessions that made grown men flinch. Massage work so aggressive it was less rehabilitation and more controlled damage. Joanna wore it all like a badge. The sport noticed her immediately, so did the rumors. Her development was simply too fast and too extreme to be explained away by youth alone. Anabolic enhancement was the whisper that followed every appearance. She never confirmed it. She never needed to. The evidence had its own voice. What nobody saw coming was what the years of pushing that body would eventually produce. By 2019, Joanna had developed early-onset osteoarthritis in both knees. Not the mild kind that slows athletes down in their 50s. The severe kind that removed training from her life entirely. Without the gym, Joanna lost the one thing that had given her an identity since her teenage years. In April 2020, she passed away at home at the age of 43. The bodybuilding community mourned someone who had given everything to the sport earlier than anyone else, and received less time than anyone deserved. Bev Francis. They built her up, and then told her she was too much. Bev Francis did not come from bodybuilding. She came from powerlifting, and she came from it as a 6-time world champion. When she crossed over into bodybuilding in the early 1980s, she did not bring a fitness model's physique. She brought a powerlifter's body. Thick, dense, built for output, not aesthetics. And it caused a crisis the sport was not prepared for. Her appearance in the 1983 documentary Pumping Iron 2, The Women, was supposed to be a celebration of female strength. Instead, it ignited a debate that still has not fully resolved itself. Was Bev's body beautiful? Was it acceptable? Was it too masculine? Judges who saw her on stage did not know whether to score her first or disqualify her on principle. The steroid speculation was immediate and relentless. Her muscle mass, her voice, the particular way her body had developed all pointed toward hormonal assistance. Bev never admitted to it, but the circumstantial case built itself. What happened next was genuinely cruel. The sport that had handed her a spotlight started lowering her scores, not for poor conditioning, not for lack of muscle, but for having too much. Bev Francis, one of the strongest women alive, was being told she needed to become less. She had surgery to reshape her face. She reduced her muscle mass deliberately. She dismantled the body she had built in order to stay relevant in a sport that was punishing her for building it. Then in 1987, she won the world championship anyway, and walked away with the complicated knowledge that she had only won by agreeing to be smaller than she was. Natalya Kuznetsova. She broke the records and broke the conversation. There is a moment when you look at Natalya Kuznetsova's numbers, and your brain simply refuses to accept them. 5'7", 225 pounds, arms at 19 inches, thighs at 29, a bench press of 375 pounds, a deadlift of 530. These are not female bodybuilding numbers. These are numbers that would make elite male powerlifters recalibrate their goals. Natalya did not arrive at these numbers through any mystery. She talked about her steroid use openly, treating it the same way a sprinter might discuss their training shoes, a tool, a part of the program, something that helped her do what she came to do. The side effects were visible, and she did not pretend otherwise. Her voice had dropped. Her jawline had changed.
Одна из моих наград.
Her body fat had been reduced to a level where every fiber and vein was on permanent display beneath her skin. She set world records. She became a global conversation. In Russia and internationally, her image sparked arguments about gender, beauty, sports, and the limits of the human body. People who had never cared about powerlifting or bodybuilding suddenly had opinions about Natalya Kuznetsova. She did not engage with most of it. She was too busy training. What Natalya represents is something the sport usually dances around: the full, unfiltered, unedited consequence of removing all natural limits from a human body, not as a warning, not as an apology, just as a fact. This is what that looks like, and she was completely fine with it. Wuji, she walked into a nation that wasn't ready for her. South Korea has one of the most specific and codified standards of female beauty in the world. Slim, pale, delicate, small-featured. The ideal is so consistent that entire industries exist to help women conform to it. Plastic surgery clinics, skin whitening products. Diet culture so aggressive it makes Western standards look relaxed. Wuji looked at all of that and built the opposite. She started at 105 pounds, slim, like the standard suggested. Then she started lifting and lifting and lifting until she had added nearly 50 pounds of muscle onto a frame that her culture had decided should stay slight. Her final competition weight of 154 pounds represented not just physical transformation, but a kind of cultural rebellion that she may not have consciously intended, but absolutely produced. When she appeared on the variety show Star King in 2016, the studio audience reaction was not polite surprise. It was genuine shock. Her broad shoulders, her deepened voice, her sheer physical scale against the backdrop of Korean femininity norms created a moment of genuine cultural collision. She was not dressed for it. She was not performing it. She was just standing there. And that was enough to make the room gasp. Yeon never confirmed steroid use, but her transformation timeline and physical presentation made the question unavoidable. The sport she competed in at IFBB level does not typically produce those results through discipline alone. South Korea is still figuring out what to do with the idea of Wuji. She did not wait for them to decide. She built what she wanted to build and left the debate to everyone else. Brigita Brezovvatch, disqualified for being exactly what she was supposed to be. Brigita Brezovvatch was 14 years old when she saw a photograph of bodybuilder Anya Langer and made a decision that would define the next 3 decades of her life. She was going to be that strong. Not like that strong. That strong. Exactly. No compromise. She spent years in fitness competition, building a body that kept outgrowing the sport's expectations. Her muscles were not developing on the schedule that fitness wanted. They were developing on Brigita's schedule. Faster, fuller, more serious than the judges were asking for. In 2004, at the World Fitness Championships, she was disqualified. The official reason was essentially that she had worked too hard. She was too muscular for the division. The sport had a ceiling, and Brigita had not noticed it or had simply decided it did not apply to her. Any reasonable person might have slowed down at that point. Brigita switched to professional bodybuilding and accelerated. She went from 116 pounds to 143 pounds of dense, competition-ready muscle. She won 3 IFBB pro titles. She became a regular presence in the top 5 at major international competitions. Her stage presentation was precise, powerful, and impossible to ignore. Steroid speculation followed her everywhere. The transformation was too dramatic. The conditioning was too perfect. The timeline did not match what natural progression looked like. She never confirmed anything, but the questions never stopped either. Brigita's story cuts to something essential about female bodybuilding. The sport asks women to be extraordinary and then punishes them when they actually achieve it. She refused to accept that contradiction. She just kept getting bigger. Denise Masino. She built her own empire and paid the price nobody talks about. Denise Masino figured something out before almost anyone else in her sport did. The trophy was not the product. She was the product. And if she controlled herself, she controlled everything. In the early 1990s, she began competing in NPC bodybuilding while simultaneously building a direct-to-fan presence that predated the internet's ability to support it. She understood her audience, she knew what they wanted to see, and she delivered it consistently while also competing at a national level in one of the most physically demanding sports that exists. That combination of entrepreneurial instinct and athletic obsession made her genuinely unique. Her physique was the kind that generates strong reactions regardless of which direction your personal aesthetics point. Striated, vascular, conditioned to a degree that removed visible body fat almost entirely and replaced it with muscle detail that looked more like anatomy illustration than human body. The level of conditioning she brought to competition prep did not happen without assistance. The community understood this. The physical evidence was visible. The androgenic markers were present. Her voice carried a huskiness that training alone does not produce. Her facial structure had shifted incrementally over the years in ways familiar to anyone who tracks those changes. What separated Denise from many others in this video was not the transformation. It was the cost. The relationships that became impossible to maintain when your life is structured entirely around your body. The isolation that comes from a discipline so extreme, it leaves no room for spontaneity. The years that compound quietly in joints, in hormones, in the chemistry of a body that has been aggressively managed for a very long time. She stepped away from competing and the sport moved on. It always does. But Denise's story is worth remembering not just for what she built, but for everything she spent to build it. 13 women, 13 different reasons, 13 different outcomes, but one thread running through every single story. The body keeps score. It remembers what you fed it, what you injected into it, what you asked it to become. Some of these women found glory, some found pain, some found both. What none of them found was an exit from the consequences. Steroids do not negotiate. They deliver exactly what they promised, and then collect exactly what they were always going to take. What do you think? Let us know in the comments.